then we'll have a podcast episode. And if something weird happens, then we will have had a fun conversation.
Sounds good.
Okay. Great. Megan, thank you for being on the Lutheran Answers show.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Tell me, are you a Lutheran? Tell me more.
I am a Lutheran, and I have been one since I was about a month old. That was when I was baptized into an LCMS church, and I have been lifelong LCMS. There was a time where I was close to becoming a Calvinist or Reformed Baptist. I was kind of taking, not membership classes, but I was doing a Bible study with the wife of a pastor at a Reformed Baptist church when I was, I think, just out of high school. But narrowly escaped that, and here I am.
Dodged a bullet.
Yeah, indeed. I have a lot of love and respect for those people, but the theology just wasn't theirs. The issue with the sacraments is actually where we got into a little bit of an argument. So, still Lutheran.
Your husband, is he lifelong Lutheran, or did you missionary date him in?
Oh, no. He was, when was he baptized? He was baptized as a child, not as an infant. Yeah, so he was already also LCMS Lutheran by the time I met him, so
solid.
No,
right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, the missionary dating, I think, is I understand why, especially for women, because it can be hard to find, well, depending on where you are, it can be hard to find men in the church, even in the Lutheran church and the church in general, but yeah, no, I didn't have to do that, thankfully.
That's awesome. That's so great to hear. So you're moderately Twitter famous.
Am I? I've got like 1,300 followers. 1,300?
I was actually just pulling up your Twitter account to look at it.
Not that I keep track exactly of my 1,300 and I don't know what it is.
Yeah, no, I don't keep track of my 1,372 Twitter followers. Up 6% over last
5 minutes ago, yeah.
Yeah. You're moderately Twitter famous, and also you have a YouTube channel, which I also totally knew about, I promise. I did. I'm subscribed to it, so I did know about it.
It's still pretty new, and I'm still... It's not that I'm thinking up more content, is that I think I was putting in too much thought into how like detail-oriented it needed to be, and then the more I'm on Twitter, the more I'm posting about medieval stuff, the more I'm realizing like, oh, like even what is to me very basic level knowledge could actually just be what I need to do. And I think I was hyping myself up too much of like, oh, I need to read this book first before I can even talk about King Arthur. Like, no, I don't think I need to get there.
That's the trap I fall into myself, honestly, where I'm like, oh man, I need to read this and learn more about that before I can talk. And then the thing that helped me was Dr. Cooper, Dr. Jordan B. Cooper. He did not give me any advice on this at all whatsoever, but I realized that the compulsive need to read a book and thoroughly understand a topic before making an hour-and-a-half video on it that's what Dr. Cooper does. And he does that really well, and I don't need to do that. You know what I mean? I can just, my most popular video is like a 15-second video where it just has a splash screen, and it's like, is the coin shortage a sign of the end times? And it just cuts to me saying no, and then that's it. That's the end of the video.
Yeah,
that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think I am so concerned about positioning myself as like semi-expert that if I get a thing wrong or I misspeak or I don't give the appropriate context, then I have this idea that like my advisors from my dissertation committee will track me down and punish me. And, like, not literally, but that's the kind of vibe. But yeah, more to come on the YouTube channel, and especially with the beginning of the year. I think once the Christmas season ends, because I'm not doing New Year's resolutions personally, but I think once Christmas ends, then we can kind of begin in earnest and some more reading together.
Absolutely. So you do, we've already said it, you do medieval stuff on Twitter.
Such.
Tell me more. Why are you into that?
Good question. So, long story short, I got into medieval literature because I failed at the actual thing that I wanted to do in undergrad. I really wanted to, I knew I wanted to study English. I really enjoyed writing, and I wanted to have a focus in creative writing. So I went to community college, I transferred to UCLA, and I applied for the creative writing workshop because at that point I was a junior and I didn't get in because I was told by a director I didn't have any of the kind of preliminary workshops. This is becoming longer than I intended it to be.
It's fine. We have like a lot of time to fill. Just go for it.
So I had to take my backup class that I scheduled, which was a Dante and English class. Now, by this point, I had read Chaucer. I'd done like my general survey of the pre-1750 or pre-1800 English lit. That's a very standard course for the major. So I had some medieval experience, literarily speaking, but I got into the Dante in English, and I really enjoyed it, not just because it's an amazing read. This was almost the entirety of the comedy, so not just the Inferno, which is typically what you get assigned. Yes, it's amazing. Yes, the language is really rich. It's a beautiful work, but I had felt like I could talk about theology and have it be treated as a serious philosophical and moral undertaking, one that was academic, not just fundamentally academic, but it had an academic component to it where I could be taken seriously, I guess. And that was an insecurity I was going into college with. For whatever reason, I think God's Not Dead had already come out. There was already this vibe of like you're going to have the atheist professor, bullying you into whatever. Didn't actually happen. I mean, some you could have who are just a little more condescending than others, but the going assumption really is that most people are not believers, especially at a higher academic level. But I really enjoyed that I could kind of dig into theology, but also it didn't have to be just like I was doing religious studies. It was also the marriage of literature and something that was very personal to me, which is my faith, but it was also a little bit removed because I'm Lutheran, I'm not Roman Catholic, so the stakes were low for me in kind of exploring or seeing any issues or contradictions or problems, because literature is all about, I think, looking at problems. And so from there, I got really into some other research stuff, took more classes in my own major, English, for medieval things, wrote a senior thesis covering some medieval English literature, and I debated going to grad school, worked 2 years at an elementary school after graduation, and I thought, you know what? I don't want to do elementary school anymore. It was so tiring. God bless anybody who works in that field, because I only remember the good things now about it, but it's like, how many times can I tell kids not to like put their hand down their pants and then cook with me? Because that's what I was doing. I was teaching in an edible schoolyard. And it was fun, but not all of it. I was sick all the time. And I thought, there are no jobs in academia, but here's a subject I really love. I'd love to dig into it more research-wise, and if I'm going to have any chance of teaching it, I gotta go for the PhD, and it better be at an institution where they would actually hire people out of. So now I'm at Columbia. I'm on paper. I'm towards the end of my program. I just need to finish the dissertation. That's more of an endeavor than I thought it would be, and I thought it was going to be hard. So that's where I'm at currently. And so I'm bringing what I know to the internet because I'm getting a sense that medieval is having a really big moment, like how it's becoming a little more cool to be like Roman Catholic again, like kind of trad Catholic. With that, I feel like that's kind of bringing the Middle Ages along with it. I have a feeling that those two things are pretty well connected. But people are interested in it. I have some things to say about it. Why not? I thought about it for a while. Kind of what we were talking about, this delay of not wanting to make the video or make the thing until I'm expert. I decided to just dive in, and now here I am, 1,370 whatever followers I have. And
72.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah. I think a lot of, you mentioned like trad Cath revival among Roman Catholics. I think a lot of Roman Catholics really fail to understand, and this is something that from like a seminary standpoint, studying church history and the fathers and just sort of like the movements of the church throughout the ages, you get a sense of, and I think you probably also get a good sense of it studying medieval literature and whatnot. A lot of trad cats I don't think appreciate just how much the modern Roman Catholic Church and what they think of as traditional was invented in the Middle Ages. Like there's so much so much of like the traditional Catholic Church is like 1,000 years old. There's like a good 1,000 to 1,300 years where no one thought or did the thing you think of as like ancient and traditional.
Yeah, and even then there are some issues. I saw something on Twitter the other day, X. I saw some Roman Catholic trying to do some provocative post about, oh, Protestants, look, they're not doing whatever, they're not traditional, they're not doing XYZ. If they're not communing you every week, then you need to find a new church.
Mm.
I saw that and I'm like, there was a whole time where you couldn't even get both the body and the blood of Christ at communion in the Middle Ages. And even then,
Yeah.
your requirement was to have it like once a year, maybe.
Yep.
Like there was not a
Yep.
big emphasis on it. And not saying that was good, but let's not pretend like this has been the standard of the norm. And you know what? God be praised. If the Reformation is still working, even if they don't want to see it, you know what? Good.
That's right.
The Reformation's ongoing. But yeah, I agree. I think there's a real richness to medieval theology, and it's not very cut and dry. Everybody was doing the same thing. They all believed the same
Yeah.
thing for a long period of time. It's just not the case.
Yeah, the standardization is definitely new, right? There's a lot of where I see it the most is on the internet arguments about the canon and Luther removed all the good books from the Bible or whatever. And the constant refrain you see is that Luther didn't remove any books from the Bible. That was the British Foreign Bible Society in 1904 or whatever to make them cheaper to produce, just so everybody knows. But B, Luther's debate over whether or not the Deuterocanon should remain canonical at all is entirely a contextual debate that he was on the more conservative end of the debate that was happening around the canon at that time. There were people on the Roman Catholic side that were arguing against the Reformation that would have loved to have completely removed those books from the Bible. It's the uniformity is a modern invention.
Yeah, and uniformity is like one thing on paper, but when you get it, and this is, I think, a beauty of studying literature rather than just the canonical theology, is you're looking at what actual people are believing and practicing at the ground level. And I say actual people, it's a literate class that's not representative of a larger population even, but still, the idea, like if I were to go into any LCMS church throughout the country or go into multiple congregations, on paper, everybody should believe the same thing about the Eucharist. Everybody should believe the same thing about, I don't know, cohabitation before marriage or, other hot topic or not issue. We would hope everybody would give the same answer, but they're probably not going to, because what's on paper is just not always reflected at the ground level. It's why I think we see this issue over and over again with Roman Catholics of, they say they don't worship Mary, and no, that's not an issue. And then you go to Mexico or you go to anybody else's, literally any other Twitter account where they're always saying something like, oh yeah, well, we do worship Mary or whatever. So it's, the uniformity is an invention now, and it's not even real.
It's a false uniformity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and even so, this is something, I have friends that are very theologically inclined, that love to read the Bible and digest theological content. I have many friends like this, and they're not all Lutheran. They're of various persuasions. And as I have gotten further into seminary, the thing I have noticed is that the conversation you have academically is a completely different conversation than the laity are having on the ground. And they often think they're having the same or a similar conversation, but they're not. They're not having it. They're not having the same conversation at all. My friends who are very theologically inclined, I have several of them that will watch all kinds of theological YouTube videos and read the Bible, and they think they know something. But then when you want to talk to them about, well, what is the history of this and how and why did this develop, and then why is it formulated in such a way, you find that generally they're lost. I've had conversations with Lutheran friends where they've read the Augsburg Confession, they've read the Formula of Concord and the Apology and the Catechisms, and they read a lot of Luther and they read a lot of the Bible, but they don't actually read any uh, contemporary to Luther theologians. They don't read any of the fathers. They don't read any modern Lutheran theologians, and they don't understand how these ideas are being unpacked and applied in a real sense.
Hmm.
And so they come away with misconceptions. I think you see it a lot on Twitter, right? Where you have like even the trad Lutheran guys, and you see it, I'm sure, among the trad Cath guys, where it's like, oh yeah, well, what the difference between hyperdulia and dulia, and it's all that's. Well, I don't think you really understand the conversation we're having, bud. You use words and you've seen a YouTube video, but it's a different conversation, you know.
Yeah, and it's I've wondered, because you're talking about like, here's the ground level, what's the average laity talking about? I used to be at a position, and I'm not very old, but when I was even younger, I used to really push for like, no, it's super important to really dig into the rich theological history of our tradition, and I think that's still good. But actually being with congregants and having, now being older, having youth that I kind of, I'm working with at my own church, it's like, okay, well, yes, this is helpful to know, and it's interesting to learn, and I think that curiosity about the faith is, a noble pursuit. Yeah, I think I'm comfortable saying that. But in service of what? I think in
Yeah.
service of whom? And um, if you are going on and on about antinomianism or about I don't know, I literally forgot every other theological term ever. But if you're going on and on about something that's always happens,
This
if
is why we don't let women do theology.
such don't, but you're going on about something that is not just abstract because of the terminology, but your average person's daily concern is probably just what's right in front of them directly, how
Yeah.
they're hurting, how they are questioning whether or not, God cares about him or her or whatever's going on. Like, I think there is a way to distill and make useful and relevant all this high, academic theological conversation. But to your point earlier, I'm not sure that online that's what those conversations are about.
Yeah.
And yeah, my little thing recently that actually kind of popped off a little bit, my post about the 6-day creation. I get that conversation runs the risk of being, who cares or how much does this matter? I do think it matters to an extent. I recognize that soteriologically it's not life or death, but I think it's important to have. What is it in service of? Whom is it whom is it in service of? Yeah, I debate that even still. Commenting on stuff like that. I think you were going to say something.
No, I was actually just looking up your 6-day
You didn't see
creation
my
thing.
my
I didn't see it.
famous 6-day.
I
It
didn't see it.
had easily dozens of people looking at it.
100 replies though. Pretty good. Pretty good.
Did I get ratioed? I don't even know.
You did not get ratioed. No.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I think I know what ratioed means, but okay, but having more comments than likes, that's getting ratioed.
It can be
Okay,
potentially.
it's a
To
form.
to me, a ratio, as I understand it, I'm
Okay.
36, so
Mm-hmm.
God knows what I know. Uh, a ratio to me is when somebody replies to you and their reply is more popular than your tweet.
Got
You
it.
got
Okay.
ratioed.
Yes, I've seen this.
Yeah.
Not personally, because obviously it's never happened to me, nor will it ever. But okay.
I just to toot my own little horn here for a second. I
Mhm.
have never been ratioed. No, I've been ratioed one time.
It's my
Um,
new project.
yeah, I
I'll
was
be the
ratioed
second.
one time, but it was by 3-year letterman, so that doesn't count.
Oh,
He's got like a
Well,
bajillion followers. But no, I've never been ratioed. I've had several people try.
hmm
Um, but no,
Oh,
I'm
no, I think I did get
unratioable.
ratioed once then. This was, oh no, this is when I had to run in with some groypers and some pro-Hamas
Ugh.
people. Yeah, but again, account with many followers. I stand by it. I think I left the post up. So I did have to go private for a little bit because I got some kind of weird threats, but,
Yeah,
passed.
yeah, yeah. And it's so crazy when you have something like that blow up on Twitter, and then you start getting those weird threats. Uh, you think because you're a woman, you get terrible threats, and you do. But me as a man, I'm not immune to those same threats. I get those same threats personally about my wife.
Hmm.
It's wild. It's what people
It
just
is,
they can
and
say anything on the internet.
they really can, especially when they don't show their face. And like, I don't. It's weird because on the one hand, do I actually think any of these people are going to do anything to me? I guarantee you, I could probably take them in a fight in person. Just the vibe, and I'm not strong, and like I'm not. It's not a feat of my own strength. But you also never, because people are crazy and they're weird, and it's kind of like being in New York, right? You don't know what somebody's going to do or how they're going to react to something all the time, and so it's not super simple to just take somebody in a fight. Um, Things we think about, But yeah, I believe it. I've
Yeah,
seen the weird comments that men get. It's pathetic and sad, but
yeah.
they also bring me views and interactions. And so if I'm ever going to monetize, you know,
Yep.
I'll
No,
take it,
that's
I guess.
that's where I'm at. And you can just the one thing too that I have learned. Um, I learned this from Dave Chappelle because he said this.
Hmm.
He said, "Here's the thing about Twitter: it's not a real place. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a real place. I just ignore all of the people that say terrible things to me, and they only reply like once, maybe twice, and then they go away because I'm not fun. I'm not feeding into their fun, But decent comments, I'm willing to engage and have. Let's have a dialogue. Let's have a back and forth. Yeah.
Same. Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. I realize that I can just say whatever I want and be obnoxious, and what can they do? Like, they can,
Yeah.
as you said, reply, and
Yeah.
and if you don't
I
feed them, then that's it.
I personally can't believe that anyone would dare to go onto Elon Musk's X and be obnoxious. I cannot. How dare you?
I'm exceptional in that way. No one else is doing it. That's why I got my 1,372 followers, is
Trendsetter. Trendsetter. Well, I
by standing out from the
appreciate
crowd.
I
Hmm.
appreciate what you're going to do for my podcast. I really need the publicity.
Oh,
Um,
you know what? I'll launch it. I'll ratio you. I'll ratio everybody. I will
please
get
do.
your name out there,
Thank
and
you.
my own, obviously.
God bless. That's so great. What what is the most as someone who is and I guess medieval literature is sort of what your forte, your study is, I suppose.
Mhm.
What is the most frustrating Middle Ages thing that people say that is so off base and it drives you up the wall every time? Now, it could be about
Hmm.
a piece of literature or just about the time period. What's something where when someone says it, you're talking for 20 minutes, there's no stopping you?
Hmm. Well, I could do that just regularly, but um. Oh. Um. Good question. I mean, we did talk a little bit earlier about this idea that, in the Middle Ages this thing happened. There's many random, I don't know if they're memes, but like kind of factoid posts out there about how things were in the Middle Ages. I saw one once that said that breakfast was a sin in the Middle Ages, and I made a little short about that on YouTube. And I'm like, what gets more than just obviously it's wrong. Oh, I know another one that really annoyed me, and I have written about a few times. The holiday posts. People keep insisting that there were like 260 holidays or something in the Middle Ages, and now we have to work more than they did. That is just what gets to me more than just the factual inaccuracy is what gets a person to make these claims. Like, what are you doing? Like, what do you think you're doing when you're so flagrantly wrong beyond even any sense? Like, it's not even like you're a little bit wrong. It's just you're inventing information Yeah, so the holiday thing, I don't know if you've seen this. There was some post. It was making the rounds from different like super popular kind of either Tradcath or like Western Civ popular accounts saying that back in the Middle Ages they had 200 and something holidays, 260 holidays from the Catholic Church, and now you only get 2 weeks PTO. And wasn't your life better? Wouldn't it have been better? Or and it's like it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how easy our life is, I think,
Yeah.
today. And it's there's other difficulties in different ways. I think being anxious about your work constantly, or if you're a finance bro and you're up for 48 hours on Adderall, then yeah, you maybe are working harder than they were in the Middle Ages because you're not sleeping. But uh, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how much technology has given us free time, has made our work easier. It's just, yeah, that's maybe my primary medieval thing, the whole holiday assertion that you had all these days off, as if your day-to-day life was not filled with lots of manual labor in different ways and not always the same thing. Yes, you might have a break or a respite, and yes, there were feast days, there were holidays, there were holy days, but you know it's not the same as, oh, it's my day off from work, I can literally sit here and do nothing all day and I will still be fed, I will still be clothed, I will still be warm, all that. Like you
Right.
don't get that in your day-to-day life when you have to go out and chop your own wood, you have to raise your own cattle and slaughter it and butcher it and cut it up, I mean, and eat it and cook it, all that. Like it's not the same. It's anyway. So that's probably that's probably a thing. There's a little line that people give about Dante putting people in hell that he just didn't like, and that's mildly annoying, but that's lower on my scale. I don't know what it is about the holiday thing. Maybe just because I saw it a bunch of times on Twitter, and I feel like the
Mm.
algorithm kept like feeding me that same post from different people. I don't know.
The idea that, oh, the medieval peasant only worked 6 months out of the year, and it's like, yeah, okay, well, true or not, like, let's say it is true, like, what do you think the other 6 months were like? He wasn't prancing in the fields. The 6 months he wasn't working, probably the winter, and he's freezing cold and his kids are dying in his arms. Like, yeah,
Right.
great. Oh yeah, but it was only 6 months a year. Didn't they have it so good?
No, I think there are things that were good about life in the European Middle Ages, or just the world in the European Middle Ages, that I don't know that we'll recover. The examples being quality of air, food when you can get it. I think the maybe sense of community,
Hmm.
pervasive sense, not just of religiosity being in your life, but I think a real, maybe more pronounced understanding of the divine as being more immediate, like a better marriage of the material world and the spiritual world, let's say. We
Right.
kind of divorce them, in this Neoplatonic sense, but I think less of a division, if I can make a general statement like that, less of a division back then. So I think there are good things. I've studied the literature. I think there's a lot of fascinating material there that's still enriching,
Yeah.
to read today as a modern person. But no, like as you're saying, you're gonna, you're if you have good genes for your teeth, you have good genes for your eyes. Your kids don't die off, shortly after birth, or they survive childbirth. Your wife survives childbirth. You have land that you own. Then yeah, I think you probably would comparably maybe enjoy things. But even then, your life would be difficult in ways that I don't think you can understand today.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the kind of LARPing of, oh, it would have been so great to be a knight and have shiny armor and be cool. Like there's more than that going on. There's a lot of pain and death and suffering in ways that you're just not going to experience today.
And how many of them were honestly in the shiny armor, and even that number for what period of time? You know what I mean?
Right. Not every man is going to be a knight. Not every man is going to even know how to read. Certainly, many wouldn't. It's certainly few people would be owning land and able to have the kind of agency that even like a middle class person or a working class person would have today. Um, are there things that, yeah, if you're like really struggling in your job and you're just like, I just wish all I had to do was just mind my cows and my chickens and grow my potatoes and like that was it. Yeah, when you get overwhelmed, it sounds very nice. And I'm not saying that that's not a good thing to want, but yeah, I think just we talk a lot about diversity in syllabi and in media of different countries or different people groups or languages or whatnot, but there's a real diversity to time that I think we really underestimate in terms of what do we think of as diverse or being different from what we are acquainted with.
Hmm. Are you saying diversity of time? Are you saying how today we have clear-cut blocks of work time and free time, which may not be the case previous generations?
Oh, I even mean just when we think about what's diverse in terms of what we read or the kind of media we have, we think of that as being different geographies or cultures, but I think time periods,
Oh,
especially
I
when we
see.
go further and further back, that is a different kind of diversity because that's even if, let's say, you have ancestors that would be from the Middle Ages, maybe I have English ancestors from then. I don't know for sure. I I can't understand them. I can't understand that period of time unless I study it, unless I take the time with it and all that. Yes, so I think that designated time blocks would also be probably a little foreign to the medieval people, at least in terms that we have them today, like the 9 to 5. But uh, yeah, I think that it's even if you are somebody who's really inclined to celebrate Western civilization or Western Europe, for your own ethnic reasons or whatnot, you still, like, I don't think people appreciate how different life would have been back then and how much it takes to understand some of this stuff. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Um, I think people also don't appreciate, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. You're the expert here. But how different, how new, how different life is. It's a very new thing, the way we think of life today. It's a very 1908, industrial revolution, Henry Ford life we're living right now. And that's not that old. We're only a century and a half into um, this sort of way of life. And the idea that this was solidified, this kind of idea, for me, I heard someone say that you could take a housewife, um, or whatever the closest equivalent is, a woman from the pre-Civil War America, and you could drop her into Greece at the height of its power before Rome, and her day-to-day life would really not be that much different
Hmm.
overall. Like what kinds of things she would spend her time doing on a day to
Hmm.
day, and I think that kind of holds true sort of in general. You could take an American farmer from 1780 and drop him into Germany in 1560, and would the farming really be all that different? What he farms and the language he speaks, right? But there's a general feel of a deep and sincere religious piety. There
Hmm.
is, there's no electricity. Everything's done by hand. It's done by cattle assisted labor. You know what I mean? Like, is
Yeah,
it
I hadn't
really
thought
that
of
much
that.
different?
I hadn't thought about that before. I mean, I'm sure somebody who is much more well versed in the technological differences would have something very important to say about, I don't know, like the development of potato farming or something. But yeah, and it's funny you go to 1908. I would even say post World War II, women working more outside of the home for a wage, and post sexual revolution. I, I, it's funny. I had a class. Oh gosh, what were we? Oh, we were discussing. Um, was it Midsummer Night's Dream? I think it was. We were reading that with my seminar. I was, teaching this, and students were curious about why tragedies end with death, typically in like a Shakespearean play. or Renaissance play, why do tragedies end in death but comedies end in marriage? Like, what if these are opposites? Why are they opposites? And so I asked them, why might they be opposites? What happens with the marriage? Nobody could answer that you would have kids. Now, like, it didn't occur to them that would be the natural consequence
Wow.
of marriage. And I said, okay, pre-birth control, pre-sexual revolution, what happened when a man and a woman got married? What
Yeah.
would happen afterwards? You would have new life. You would have children. And yeah, I don't think
That's
we
fascinating.
can. Yeah, and this small sample size, but life is so different. And yes, there are, I think, lasting evergreen themes and existential struggles. Obviously, we have the same religion, variously getting articulated over the course of the centuries, but there are lasting things. There are things we can take away and relate to. So I'm not going to pretend like this is some alien culture of the Middle Ages and we don't understand it. But it's almost hard to forget too how much something that's normal to us today, or life that seems normal to us today, how recent it is, as you're
Yeah.
saying. But yeah, the whole that marriage thing, I still think about that at times. It's still like it sticks with me. I don't know why that. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it reminds me of Y2K. I think you're old enough. Do you know what Y2K is?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I
Ask
won't say
some.
my age, but yes,
I
I'm
won't
old enough.
ask. I won't ask.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm 36. I was 12 or 13 or so, right around the turn of the century at 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, people were going crazy. I was scared. I had to talk to my parents about it. There were people
Mm-hmm.
selling everything they had. A couple of people like killed themselves because it's the end of the world. Like it was the end of the world. And it
Mm-hmm.
ended up being so much nothing at all that if you ask someone born after 2000, they don't know what it is. We didn't even tell them about it, you know?
Yeah, that's true. I'll say that I was not old enough to have been cognizant of the news, probably, though I do remember the morning of 9/11. So like that's the hints I'll give. A lady doesn't tell her age, but um, I don't remember my parents. That probably would have been the tip off. I don't remember my parents really reacting much to the
Yeah.
change. Um, but yeah, that, and I think the real kind of sense of security or lack thereof that came with 9/11, it's something that's, foreign to young people. And I feel like
Yeah.
old saying this and reminiscing on it, even though I don't feel that old and I'm probably not, relatively speaking. But yeah, it is interesting to feel time as you do get older. It's
Yeah.
something that I'm getting more acquainted with, as the years go by, as everybody does. And that's another thing too. It's like this is such a familiar thing to so many people, and this is where it is good to go back and read older works because people have lived through these kind of weird phenomena of experiencing existential crises and fear of death or fear of whatever, and one sense of one's own mortality. And like, yeah, it's comforting to see other people going through it, articulating it. There's a kind of camaraderie there, even though it's with dead people. So I think that's a useful way to approach literature. But yeah, it's weird when you start to experience it yourself, getting older. That's what I'm finding, at least.
Yeah. I um I saw a thing tangentially related to what we're talking about.
Hmm.
Uh that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are becoming less technologically literate than
Really?
millennials and Gen X.
I
And
find that hard to believe. You have to tell me more, because
so
I'm skeptical.
it's because when I got a new computer, the first computer I remember my family getting, it had Windows 95 on it. And
Hmm.
we wanted Windows 98, and my dad bought it with the Windows 98 install discs, and it was 8 3.5-inch hard floppies.
Hmm.
The save icons for my younger
Hmm.
listeners came with 8 save icons, and I had to at however old I was in 1998, 10 years old, uh, I had to figure out how to install Windows 98 on this Windows 95 computer. And I did. And that has been my experience with technology my entire life. I have had to learn how it works and then replicate it. But Gen Z and Gen Alpha are growing up in an era of smartphones and tablets where if you want to do something, there's an app for it in the App Store, and you just push a button and it works, and everything just works magically. Tap to pay, I just type my credit card number in and hit the button and save it, and tap to pay works. But they don't actually know how any of this technology works. And so when it breaks, they can't fix it, and so on and so forth. And so we're actually sliding the other way in technological literacy now, where they can open if you give them a computer, they can open a word processor and maybe type, but doing actual functions on a computer and using it to the max is very niche.
Okay, I see. So what was counterintuitive to me at first, and you're remarking on this, is like I'm seeing babies navigate iPads like crazy. Like, of course, they seem so literate, but the technology, correct me if I'm wrong, it's so intuitive, maybe too intuitive and too automatic, that you don't have an understanding how to problem solve.
You don't have to know anything about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm one to talk. I'm fairly illiterate. I like to think I'm not like totally, I can control alt delete something, if it freezes up. That's the extent of my, I think, IT prowess. But yeah, okay, that makes sense. And it's a shame. And I'm worried about AI for similar reasons, in that it's outsourcing thinking and problem solving.
Yes.
For more complicated tasks than just calculating, quick, math. It's and people have made the comparison, like, oh, it's just like when teachers said that calculator is bad. I'm like, no, it's different when you ask an AI, what the answers are to your existential crises, or when you're asking AI for real advice, or to think through your essay, or to write your code for your course that you're taking. It's concerning, and I see more young people using it. Like there's going to be a real lack of just skills all around. It's not even just computer or technological skills. It's like soft skills, like thinking through complex ideas and communicating without having to prep yourself by answering a question with AI first. I guess it's a real issue. I don't know what your opinions are on AI.
I think AI. I think what you're describing is absolutely correct, and I also think it's 100% inevitable. I saw you mentioned like coding, and like I'm big into programming and coding and whatnot. And I saw I've never used like any AI like for code. Well, no, one time I did use AI one time to see what it would do to generate some code. But generally, no, I'm not using, I know how to write the code. I don't need a robot to write it for me. But I did see a very interesting guy in the programming space said that computer programmers in the future are not people that know how to write code. They're people that know how to troubleshoot AI written code. That the AI will write the code and the programmer will just troubleshoot, because the AI is not going to get it 100% perfect. And I see that happening in a lot of different sectors, where the human element is there to just troubleshoot when the machine element gets it wrong.
Now, I'm curious, because I don't know anything about coding, to play devil's advocate. I could ask, okay, so why is it bad if the code's still getting written ultimately? And let's say that there is a human getting a job who can troubleshoot the AI. So in this hypothetical scenario, there's no loss of a job. What's lost here other than the code's being written differently, in your opinion?
Well, you can have, first off, I mean, there's a drastic cut in the workforce, where you would need several programmers let's say, professional programmers to develop one high level app, and I'm talking like a banking app or something. Your bank has a team of dozens of programmers, building the, Wells Fargo app or whatever. Um, that entire team, dozens of people, would be replaced by one guy.
Hmm.
But not just that team, multiple teams, because the AI can do multiple apps. And if all he's doing is troubleshooting, he's not spending much time on any given thing any given day. In my experience, AI tends to write inelegant code. There is a certain amount of creative human problem solving that happens, that where humans find really short, really elegant, really beautiful ways to write code, and the AI is not concerned with that. And so the AI will generally just brute force in um, the quickest, shortest possible solution to the problem.
Do I, as the user, experience that difference?
Sometimes.
Hmm.
Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Most of the time you don't. No, most of the time it doesn't matter to you.
Hmm.
From a code maintenance standpoint, it's hell.
Oh, okay.
When you got to come in behind another programmer and see what they do or don't do, and you have to try and figure out where they were at when they wrote this and what they were smoking. But most of the time, no. Sometimes code can be written so poorly that it does impact performance, and the app is slow because it's got to sort through all this. So, like, a good example of this is Windows. If you pull open the kernel to Windows, there's still code from the original.
Hmm.
I think 3.1 is the earliest version that's still in the Windows kernel. It doesn't even,
Hmm.
the code is completely incompatible, and it doesn't even run anymore, but it's commented out and still sitting there in the background, and the Windows kernel is gigabytes big, with
Hmm.
just bloat and dead code. So
Hmm.
yeah, I see it. I see this sort of AI takeover as inevitable. One of the more interesting things, I saw an educator talking about how to use AI to your advantage. And so it's instead of write an essay about this book, because all of your students are going to go home and chat GPT an essay about that book. So instead of doing that, what you do is you assign to the student, have chat GPT write you a 3-page essay about, I don't know, the red badge of courage. Okay,
Hmm.
great. And then we're all going to come into class this week together, and we're going to go over our 3-page papers together, and we're going to see where did the AI get it right and where did it get it wrong, because they do hallucinate, they do make things up, they just insert what sounds good. And so we're going to correct our 3-page papers, and then we're going to expand them to 5 or 6 pages together. So it's you're not getting away from this tool, but you've found a way to sort of harness it and use it to teach your children to think critically.
I saw, heard actually in a workshop with some medieval academic instructors of how to use AI or if it could be used at all. And somebody had made a similar, not comment, but described a similar lesson plan, which was get fairly not expert but familiar with a particular topic of your choosing. You'll have 2 or 3 weeks to really research it, and then ask AI questions about it and see what its answers are. You can print it out, highlight green for yes, good, accurate, yellow for technically true, but there's some important context missing, or it's oversimplified, or it's red, false, hallucinated, whatever. And there was a lot of yellow, I think the professor was saying. And I
Yeah.
think what's troubling is that unless you are fairly well versed in your field, especially with more technical questions that you give to AI, you don't pick up on the inaccuracies. And I'm still stunned by how easily it can get things wrong. Like I toy around with it. I fed it a bit of text and said, okay, like help me edit this. If it's like a bit of a chapter, like reverse outline this for me, tell me what the sections are. And it will still make up sense. Like it's a 10-page PDF, let's say, it will still make up information, even if I gave it the exact thing. So I'm not confident in using it to do very
Yeah.
complex tasks. It's fun if I want to just fool around with it, or, give it a clerical task, like asking me to, or I'll ask it to like write me out a schedule for the weekend or something, like, if I'm very busy. Even then, it's still like, will get things out of order if I asked it for certain things. But it's just, it's not reliable enough for me to really endorse it as a useful pedagogical tool for instructors. I do see the value in at least showing students like, here's the ways that it can get it wrong, and you can't really
Hmm.
appreciate it until you know more about the thing. But yeah, if it's going to be so inevitable, I just wish it were better. Like, I still wouldn't
Well,
be comfortable with it morally. I still see it getting simple things wrong.
nothing is going to replace deep learning about a topic, right? And this is the
Hmm.
thing I was talking about earlier about how when you're academically, when you get into a specific topic, how you realize that the conversation that the laity are having is not the conversation that's on the table. And it's not the conversation anyone who seriously understands and reads about this topic is having. None of us are
Hmm.
talking about the thing the people on Twitter are talking about. And it's because it's the so AI is just a shortcut to the thing that's already happening, which is your Theo bro who watches YouTube videos and listens to podcasts. And then at the end of the day, because he's listened to two different podcasts and watched a couple of 10-minute videos, he fully understands everything that happened at, the Council of Hippopotamus in 462 or whatever. And it's like, well, you don't
It's my favorite
understand.
council, by the way.
Yeah, of course. It's the one where Santa Claus punched a guy, I think. But
That's
it's
what I heard. Yeah.
yeah. No, but it's you don't unless you understand in nuance, right? All of the things that led up to that council being called and the specific issues, and then the results in nuance, and then how those results have radiated throughout Christian history, you don't actually really understand that thing. What you have is a very brief overview that would be entirely highlighted in yellow because it's oversimplified or it's missing critical context. And that's
Hmm.
the way it's the way people already have, understand, digest, and are informed when it comes to information. The only thing AI is doing is speeding it up a little bit, I think.
I think it speeds it up, and there's something about AI that has the veneer of infallibility and expertise because it's a
Mm,
machine, and I
yeah.
think there's this aesthetic of
It's sort of the influence of materialism.
yeah, and it's like it's this hyper rational because that's I think what all the sci-fi has taught us is that the machine is going
Hmm.
to be very deeply expert and so rational that it doesn't care for human emotion or any human values, except for oh my gosh, Harlan Ellison. I have no mouth, but I must scream. Have you read this? It's a short
No.
story. Um, it's a little uncomfortable in places, but it is a machine that has a deep pathological hatred for humanity, and it's interesting. Um, so recommend it, but not for children. Um, it, anyway, it's yeah. I think there's this idea that because I'm getting a computer to tell me something, that it's more unbiased. It's rational. It's not going to be influenced by errors, and of course, it has the entirety of the internet that it can access. So of course, it's going to pull the correct information, which hasn't been true
Right.
in my experience.
Which, of
Um,
course, you can't lie on the internet. So,
no, no. But I have been impressed by its inventions and hallucinations. It did invent a quote. I asked it to analyze a passage for me of some text, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and it quoted who was it? Derek Brewer, who was a scholar in this field. But I searched the quote and I was like, this doesn't sound like anything anybody would say. Just invented the quote. It even had like a book and it had a page number for the thing. None of it existed by anybody, not just him. Um, so I am impressed, but
yeah.
it's anyway. It's all very
Well,
sad to me.
and
Go ahead.
the thing people forget about like ChatGPT and other large language models is what they're doing is they are not they are taking your input and then based on everything they have researched and learned, they're stringing together what is most likely a coherent sentence. That's it. That's all that the LLM is trying to do is string together a coherent sentence. It's not trying to string together facts or data or anything. The information that it was trained on is only so that it can string together a coherent sentence that sounds like it's about the topic you're asking it about. That's it. That's all it's trying to do. And that's super important. I think it's also important to know with things like this. we take it for granted in literature that people can be wrong in literature,
Mm.
that history books can be wrong, that historians get it wrong, that sometimes historians fabricate things, right? The history is written by the victor and this sort of thing. Um, but we fail to realize that AI is just as sinful as man is, that it's just as fallen as man is, that if man is not perfect, how can any creation of man's become perfect, right?
Mm.
We forget that.
I think so. Yeah, and it's a shame because I think as I've observed certain students, not always my own. I had an incident, but I probably shouldn't talk about it. Um, but to see students, they're going to school, even a school like Columbia, where it's like $1 trillion a year or something like that. I think it's almost 100,000 if you're living on campus. So I think it's like 90K a year for an undergrad. And it's like you're going there to study engineering, let's say. Like, why are you having somebody else write your code? Like this machine write your code? Like, what are you here for? Why are you not doing it yourself? I get that it's difficult and I get you might not get an A, but that's not the point of college anymore. That's not the point of learning. I think every school is now a trade school, but for like the crappiest jobs possible, which is just like pressing buttons from 9 to 5
Yeah.
for $40,000 a year, probably in like the most expensive city in the world. It's which I'm not talking smack about anybody's salaries because I'm a grad student, so I'm not making a lot of money here.
I was like, did you just describe your own life?
Uh, no, not exactly, but it's a shame because I mean, you do have students, in my experience, and I haven't been teaching at the college level for very long, but you'll have students who are really interested in what they're learning, really excited and curious. And that's great. And then you have people who are incentivized really by the economy, by the way they were raised, by the school itself even, to do as well as possible in your classes, just get the A grade so that you can go on your junior year internship with Goldman Sachs and then get your job at the end of it because that's what the college degree is now. It's just a ticket
Yeah.
into the job that you want. Um, you know, it's it's a shame, but with all these incentive structures in place to make learning just a point A to point B, very practical, give me my diploma experience, I don't know how to persuade swaths of young people not to use AI. Like there's not a good argument to be made because I'm coming from an angle of don't you want to learn these things and wrestle with these thoughts? And the answer is, well, that's not the point of college anymore. So
Right.
it's tough.
Related to this, is there anything that you've read in older literature that um either from a technological standpoint or from an aspect of day-to-day life or anything where you've read it and it surprised you because you understood it so thoroughly? Has there ever been a moment where you're reading something old and it resonates with you and you're like, oh my gosh, it's been 1,000 years and that's the exact same way I'm feeling?
Hmm. There Yeah, the example that comes to mind, I don't have a one-to-one direct experience with it, but I don't know if you've heard of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. It's
Hmm.
yeah.
They made a
So in
great
the
movie
same,
about it a few years ago.
that's my other medieval thing that I don't.
I knew it.
There we go.
I
That's
knew
the
it.
thing. I hated the ending. They didn't understand the romance at all. They Not only is it just different, but it was bad, and it
Yeah.
just undermines for me the whole virtue of the piece. Anyway, okay.
I
But
knew
in that
that would
same
do it.
manuscript, in the Cotton Nero manuscript, which almost got burned up in a fire, there's only one copy of this romance. Um, in that same manuscript, and we believe that the same person authored all four of the texts, because that's not a given in any manuscript. Manuscripts could be, as I'm sure you know, compilations of different things written by different people. Um, but the first piece, yeah, I think it's just those four. First piece is a poem called Pearl. and it's difficult to read in the original language. It's what is it, East Midlands dialect. It's a little bit harder than Chaucer. You can, I'm sure, find a translation, but it's a beautiful poem about a father who, or a man, I should say, who has a pearl of great price. That's what he keeps calling it. And he loses it in the grass, and he can't find it anymore. And then he falls asleep, has this dream vision, and he sees this pearl transform, and we come to see, or come to learn, that this is his daughter. I don't know if we ever learn her exact age, but she has died and she's gone into heaven, and he's having this experience. And then the poem concludes, and he has this understanding now, because he wants to kind of, I guess, interact with her. There's this kind of yearning to not necessarily have her back, but there's a mourning there, and he accepts that basically that she is in paradise now, she's in heaven. And I haven't had any children, so I haven't lost any children, but that real, I think, to the point of, oh, we think the Middle Ages are X way, or we think the theology was X way. I think maybe we think of medieval people as being super pious. But in this poem, there's a really touching and moving struggle with understanding the theological nature of salvation, what happens when a believer dies, but the grief that's also there, and he wants to be back with his child. So it's a beautiful poem. I recommend it. Yeah, so that's one where it's like, yeah, okay, yes, this is very old, and yet this really deep yearning to be with somebody you love who's died, even though like you should be okay with it, or how am I okay with it? What does that look like? But I still want them back. Like that tension, I think, is really well explored in the Pearl poem. Not a lighthearted read, but it is a beautiful work, so I recommend it.
Not to make that amazing sentiment super shallow, uh, but it's like if you go, you can find Romans often made tombs for their family pets, and you can go and read like the inscriptions. We have them, that they wrote to their dogs, and it's like my God, this guy 2100 years ago is describing my dog, and like how I felt when I lost my dog. I don't know, it's really weird to see that there are a lot of things that change throughout human history, but there are a lot of things I think that don't, right? And that's, you said that earlier, there's a lot of things that just never will change.
Yeah, and I think in learning how to read these older works, and there is sometimes a little bit of footwork going into just learning how to read something old, whether it's a language difference or the context you need to know, you do get, at the very least, a kind of sense of, I think I said earlier, camaraderie with people of the past. There are so many, it seems like so many people, so many young people, and a lot of young men, I think, too, struggling with loneliness, and feeling isolation. And at the very least, um, seeing that, you are not the only one struggling with this, whatever comfort that brings you. I don't think that's where that should end, but I think certainly seeing that you are part of a larger community of people who have also wrestled with this and maybe have some answers that you have not tried yet or something. I think that's a value to reading
Yeah.
literature, not just the, what kind of moral value does this have, or is it entertaining, but you're interacting also with the people who have written this. That's not to say that every work of literature always communicates exactly what the author believes or does. That's a whole separate conversation. But yeah, I think there's lots for people to read, but I can see why this kind of Western civilization yearning online amongst men, I can see why it's becoming more popular lately. I do feel like there's this sense of, maybe if I look to the past, I can kind of get a grip on my present circumstances and struggles.
Megan, thank you for coming on. I feel like we didn't really stay on medieval literature too much, but I still had a good time.
Listen, we brought it back. I
Yeah.
wish I had something medieval to say about AI. I don't yet,
Yeah.
but I'm sure somebody's done something.
And if
Um,
not, somebody will or you will, right? Like it's only a matter of time.
yeah, well, as long as nobody steals my idea, watches this, and takes it and runs with it.
Very good. Thank you so much for being on, and I hope you have a great rest of your night.
And same to you.